So, Mom, what are
Yes.
you doing there now?
Well, I'm putting in a little bit of background because it's always good when you finish a motif to get some background around it because it really changes what it looks like. As you can
Hmm.
see here, I have to do flowers around this part.
Yeah.
But if I didn't have any background, it really looks very pale.
Oh,
But as
yeah.
soon as you get a background in it, and I love it with a dark background because it really makes the colors pop. And it's very usable on the floor too.
Now, this background, I noticed this is really a black background, or is
No,
it
it's
not
not.
black?
It's not black.
It's not black.
It's dark green wool that has been overdyed with some black, but if you look at it, it has a vague greenish sheen to it,
Huh.
and it would be hard to see, but when it's down on the floor and light hits it, you see a greenish tinge, and it's not totally dead black.
Wow.
You never, if you can help it at all, use something off the bolt. Uh, Especially in your background, because it's just a dead color.
Huh.
If you've, I mean, this looks black, but
So,
if you,
when you say dead, it's like got a richness when you
well, it has
Because-
interest.
interest. Ah.
Yeah, because it's also a spot dye, which means if you look at it closely, you can see some areas are a little bit more greener and others are a little more blacker. So when you're putting it in, it's not a solid
Hmm.
background. It has some interest to it,
Hmm. Hmm.
and it
Word
moves.
interest.
Also, when I'm hooking this, I'm hooking it uh, um, along the lines of the motif, so it's not hooked straight across or straight up and down or in little blocks. And what I'll do back here where I have some space, I'll just take my marking pen and make little circles like that. So that when I'm hooking background, I'm hooking it this way, not up and down or across like that.
Oh.
And that also gives it movement. So that even though it looks black, it's not totally black. There's a little greenish tinge.
Yeah, yeah.
And when you hook it in, say, it doesn't matter what you want to do. You could make larger circles or squiggles. Some people go like S marks. But what you're doing is you're giving it movement. And some people even would take one of the motifs and use that as their movement in the background. For instance, I've seen Betty McClintock, who's a wonderful, wonderful teacher, did a very large rug with autumn leaves, and her background she had in the shape of leaves. So, there was just this little tinge of.
So you don't really notice it too clearly, but it's there.
It's there.
Wow.
It's like an echo.
Huh.
Or a shadow, and it's
That's so cool.
and you look at it and you think, oh wow, look at that.
Wow, very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. So just some kind of interest in something that could be very
Yeah.
monotonous and flat.
So your scissors are. This is a magnet that you.
Yeah, this is a little magnet here. Usually I hook on a flat frame like this, but this happens to be the old Puritan frame that Bonnie has loaned me, and that's which is very comfortable for hooking. Now, what I was doing here with it's called a burling iron, and that's interesting. Why a burling iron? It looks like a tweezers. Okay,
Big
very
tweezers.
sharp point. And they're made in Germany, and they're steel, and you see the very, very fine point, which allows me to straighten up some loops here. I've got, a little bit of a coil of stem of some sort there, and, I want to straighten that out just a little bit. So, and the burling iron is great for that. Also for splinters and ticks. Yeah, seriously. I've never done ticks because I haven't had ticks, but splinters, it's great. It's a go-to the first time because
Better than
it's
a regular tweezer.
yeah, because you see how fine those points are.
Yes.
Okay,
that's
now
true.
one must be a bit judicious about where you store this, because if you drop it down between your sofa and put your hand down there, you've just stabbed yourself. So a good idea for this is just take a cork and have it handy in your bag. Stick it in there. Actually, they come in cases, but long lost. But yeah. And your scissors is your best friend, okay? When you're doing fine hooking, like I'm doing here, all right, now, a little trouble seeing the black sometimes, depending on the light. All right, now I'm filling in. I can't see those holes, but I feel them with my hook.
Huh.
You put the back end of your hook in, and you can feel where there's a hole. All right, now I've gotten to the end of any hole here, so I'm picking up this, and I'm going to cut it off. These are beveled, and I just go like this, and it's perfectly even. Now, when you're using a fine, this is a number 4 for background, but these are number 3s for the motifs. And when I finish a motif like this, I just go and clip. And I've already clipped this one, but I'd have a few loops sticking up. And that's the beauty of a fine cut. You can cut those loops off. It's not going to look any different.
Fine cut means it's so tight that it's not going to pull out.
Well, it'll never pull out. No, you're not going to lose it. It's that tight. You can vacuum it, and you're just fine. But with a wide cut, you can't go and cut those loops that are sticking up, because then you've got ends that you see. But with a narrow cut, you don't see that. And people say, oh, well, it's so hard to use a fine cut. It takes so much time. I can do this so much faster because I don't have to worry about which way these loops are going. They're too small. They just kind of look like velvet when you're done.
Right.
But if you have a wide cut, you've got to be careful with every loop that it's going the right direction. I mean, that to me is just taking too much time. And also, it's hard on your hand. It's hard on my hands because you're pulling. You notice I'm using a pencil hook. And what I'm doing, the movement I'm using is this to get these loops up because they're fine loops. Well, now here I am struggling with one, but these are a little wider than the 3, but still, I'm doing this. If I have a wide cut, I've got to do this. And after I've done wide cuts, and after not too long sitting and doing that, that's tough on your wrists. It is on mine. So, being older now, I find it's very nice not to have to worry about, my wrist hurting and that kind of thing. But, the black background, and I can't see where there's a hole, but I can feel it with my hook. And there's a hole there, so I can pull that up there. I can skip over one underneath, I went from here to here, and there's a stitch here. Pearl McGowan is not going to turn over in her grave with one stitch across in the back, but if you do 2 or 3, that's not good because it's too easily pulled out too, and it just looks messy.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, Mom. We've got 8 minutes here. I think we'll stop this one and
All right.
start up another one a little bit later.
Great. When I'm doing something else.
Yeah, great. Thanks.
But that's a good little bit of lesson on fine hooking. Scissors is your best friend, and I say that because, people are afraid to cut things.
Yeah.
I like this. When I'm done with this, I just go across because they're beveled. It's going to be straight, and you pay $45 for these scissors, but it's like anything else. The tools are important.
Yeah, I hear you.
And this, you can go to the drugstore, Rite Aid, and get a pair of tweezers that look very much like this, but they do not have that real fine. Feel how sharp that is. See?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Poke yourself.
Yeah, you put those in your hooking bag, and.
Oh yeah. Great.
But you notice, I've got my nail polish on these because everybody has the same tools. So I always tell my people, somehow mark your tools.
Cool.
I mean, these are mine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Because, you're hooking with, say, 5 or 6 people at a big table, and everybody has this. You put your scissors down. And I've, at times, had students walk away with one of my scissors because, you're cleaning up. They think they're scissors. They put it in their bag. But then, I'll call someone. I'm thinking, all right, I was next to her. Or she'll find it. Or somebody will call. But, it's yours. And other people maybe put a
cool
piece
trick.
of yarn on this or something.
Yeah, very cool.
Because they're all ordered from the same place.
Ah, so
And
they
they're-
all look alike.
Yeah, and these are last heard 45, probably more now.
Oh,
And
wow.
they will not need to be sharpened as long as I am hooking with wool. 100% wool. If there's anything, it's like cutting paper. If you've got any other kind of stuff in your wool, that's why it's not always a great idea to buy stuff from Salvation Army, a wool skirt, because they can market 100% wool, but there's two wool marks. One is they both look exactly alike, except one is more solid lines and the other one has some spaces between the little swirly wool mark lines, which means that there's something else there. But they call it wool, 100% wool, but it's not.
Cool.
So if you're going to go, you get something from Pendleton,
Mm-hmm.
a Pendleton skirt, or you get something from Woolrich, men's shirts, plaid shirts and stuff. They will be 100%. But anything else, especially now, everything has, some kind of stuff in it that makes it washable and all that. So, which is good, but
Oh, I have a great memory. I remember asking you if I could use your scissors to cut something. You would say, "Don't use my good scissors on paper."
yes. Yeah, back my sewing scissors were too very expensive. And yeah.
It's funny. So paper dulls them.
Oh, yeah,
But wool
yeah.
will not. Oh.
Well, any fiber, natural fiber, silk, wool, 100% cotton, you're fine. But when you get into the nylon and the, whatever else they put in it, any synthetic fiber, and good test for that, okay? You go into a store and you take a match with you, and you cut off a little piece and you burn it. And if there's a little bead of something left in those ashes, that's synthetic fiber. They frown on that. But, you also, the other test is to take a little snip. I mean, if you get something at Salvation Army or something, just take a little piece of it and put it in a dish with straight bleach overnight. Everything will disappear but the synthetic fiber.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting.
If it's wool, the wool is gone. And you'll find a little netting of stuff left, and that's synthetic. But it's also very important when you're dyeing wool, because that stuff doesn't take the dye.
Interesting.
If
Yeah,
I were
yeah.
dyeing for this, I have my 8 values for each one of these. And I bought the wool, say, from Dora Mills, which is made in by Pendleton. It's 100% wool flannel, and it's flannel because it's very tightly woven. And if you get other stuff, it's loosely woven, and it's going to fall apart when you cut it. But anyway, suppose I had dyed this with 100% wool, and then I thought, oh, I need some more. And I have a green that's really like that to dye over, but it has synthetic fiber. It's going to turn out to be a different shade, probably lighter, because part of it's not taking up the dye. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, and we'll talk again soon.
Okay, all right. My own personal interviewer.